This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas. Magazine publisher and entrepreneur Judith Mancini is sharing captivating conversations with experts in their field about the latest trends in our ever-changing world to help you become healthy, wealthy, and wise. Judith Mancini Today will spark your interest and inspire you to lead your best life ever. And now, here's Judith.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining me today on Judith Mancini Today. I am Judith. You know, it's a mad, mad world. I don't know if you saw that movie. It was a funny movie. But the definition of mad can be you're angry with somebody, or the other definition of mad could be you're mentally unstable. So I think this applies to our world here in America and the world in general. It applies in both ways because I'm going to tell you I am very angry and it's making me mentally agitated. So why am I angry? None of the promises that President Biden made have come through. And we are just getting deeper and deeper into trouble. I'm not going to make this a whole political thing, but I want to say one thing. Do you know this man's name? His name is Judge Juan Merchan. He is the one who's handling the trial. He's the head of it, the trial against former President Trump with the hush money scandal. Now, I'm not sure why it's even in court, to tell you the truth. There was a non-disclosure in all of this. I don't understand it. People pay people for not saying things all the time, particularly celebrities who write non-disclosures so that when they're in there and they're cleaning their house or they're cooking dinner or helping them when they're being like a secretary to them or an assistant to them, they all sign non-disclosures and there's always money involved. So this is a legal question. I'm not an attorney. That's just my opinion. But I'll tell you why I'm so angry about this. This judge has told President Trump that he cannot go to Barron's graduation. He can't have the time off from the trial to go to Barron's graduation from high school. You want to know why I'm angry? It's not President Trump who's going to be suffering so much from this decision or this order. He will suffer because it's his son and he wants to be there, of course. For so many of the people in the United States, this is a big deal for high school graduation. And Barron worked hard. You know who's going to be hurt the most? Barron. Do you think that this will be out of his mind ever in his life? No. He is going to remember Judge Merchan, however you pronounce his name. Barron will remember him for the rest of his life as being the nasty man who didn't allow his dad to come and see him graduate. I hope he grows up to be president too, and he can get rid of this guy who's sitting on the bench. This is just nothing but clearly, in my opinion, and in many people's opinion, this is just election interference since President Trump can't even go out and campaign. As you see President Biden hitting Pennsylvania pretty hard. So that's why I'm upset this morning, but I find that my sleep is interrupted now. I'm not getting good night's sleep. And I know many of you aren't. We've even done a show on lack of sleep, but this is a nasty circle. Your lack of sleep causes you to worry, but worrying causes lack of sleep. So it's this circle that's going around and around and around, and it's not helping anyone. And why are we worried? Because inflation, war, the price of everything connected to the inflation, companies going out of business. This is making us all very nervous. And I don't know how we can solve it. I know there have been a lot of companies that have gone out of business, and I just want to read you a few before we get into what we can do. These are just a few. Now, this is from a post on Facebook, and I don't know who wrote it, but they're just, I checked some of them, and some of them are correct and some are not correct. But according to this compilation of people going out of businesses or cutting back on business, there are people like Best Buy closing 20 stores. This is nationwide. Lowe's closed 50 stores. Target is closing 9 stores in 4 states. They're all Democrat states. They're all blue states. Walmart is closing 23 stores in 8 states, and they're all blue. Is this really Build Back Better? I don't understand it. People are losing jobs. People are losing places to go buy product at an agreeable price. Dollar Tree is closing 1,000 stores. I heard on the news the other night that 99-cent stores, I think, are only in California, but they're closing every single store. Gap is closing 350 stores. Gap, people used to love Gap. They can't afford to shop there anymore. So Gap has to close. People are losing their jobs, and people are losing the cute clothes and the reasonable prices. Sears has closed all but 22 stores. I know after going around to different malls where we lived up until last October, the parking lots at these malls, these outside malls and the inside malls, are empty. Nobody's shopping. They're getting necessities. I saw one glaring mistake on this report that was on Facebook from the regular citizen. U.S. Bank closed 23 branches. Well, I know that's not true because I bank at U.S. Bank. What they did close some branches, but it was due to a merger. So the people that worked at the other bank, of course, lost their jobs or they were relocated. So some of these facts aren't true. Most of them are. Bank of America closing 20. Capital One closing 50. Wells Fargo closed over 60. Grocery stores are closing. The Kroger conglomeration closed 413 stores. They own a lot of different stores. Kroger does. So that's clear across the country of all the different stores they close. So Kroger owns places like Albertsons now, places like that. In California, that store. It's a disaster, but it's not just in this kind of inflation. Out here, you listen to the news and you hear gas is up to $3 again. Well, that's true for most of the nation. In California, it's up more than that, due to the fact that Biden has even depleted the national strategic tanks, whatever you call them, the reserve, which is there for exactly what it says, strategic reserve. We're out of fuel. What would happen if we can't get any fuel to those tankers that are over trying to protect Israel, or our Air Force, or our Army, the Marines, anybody who has that, to say nothing of the airlines, where people not only use the airlines for pleasure, but many people still use them for business. This is absolutely craziness. This is not Build Back Better. This is build nothing. This is disastrous. So that's why you're stressed. Why else? I mean, we stand to be in war. We've been threatened. We're trying to help our best ally, our only ally in the Middle East, and we're trying to protect them. We're trying to help Ukraine, which doesn't tell us anything about where they're spending the money we've been sending. This is not what Build Back Better was supposed to be. It was supposed to improve the infrastructure, the social systems, the economics, the environment, and livelihoods, plus many other things. I haven't seen anything that has improved with the Biden Build Back Better plan. So I'm going to get off the bandwagon here for the vote coming up in November. But just keep all of this in mind, because it's not going to get better. You're going to have more stress, and it's going to be really rocky between now and November. So I've talked about inflation before. I've talked about how you can help yourself. I want you to get good night's sleep. So I want you to be proactive in fighting inflation, proactive in not depleting your entire life savings. So let's talk about that. You know, even if inflation does go down, the report that came out initially said inflation was better, but that wasn't true. They had to get on the news and correct it, and it actually went up. And prices usually go up with inflation, as you know. The biggest place you notice it is in your food and in your gas for your car, or your electricity for your car. I forgot. Well, I don't know how much that goes up, because it's pretty hard to even find a charging station. So we're not going to get into electric cars, which I think would be a good idea sometime in the future, but they haven't been worked out enough and made them possible to buy. So, all right, what happens with inflation? The prices go up. But what happens when inflation goes down? Do the prices go down? No, not usually. We're going to be stuck with these prices forever. Now, what can you do to have your situation improve and being able to afford to weather this inflation problem? Well, first of all, you have to have higher wages, and you have to lower the interest rates. And you know that Yellen is continuously yelling on the television cameras time to tell us that the rates are going down, but they're not going down. Try to go get a mortgage and see what you're going to be paying on a 30-year mortgage, which is the most common mortgage for people living. One thought: did you know in most countries you can't buy a home, a house, with a mortgage? You need to have the cash to do it. So we are very fortunate in this country that we can do that. So we need all of that, and we need the stable prices on food and gasoline for your cars and heating, all of that. Even the electric bills go up. Everything is going up. I have noticed if I go to the market now, and I have stopped going to the upscale markets like Whole Foods and Gelson's. I shop in the organic parts of markets that are not quite as expensive as those other ones. But the prices are going up everywhere. And that's because in California now, in the restaurant business, fast food market, they have raised the hourly rate to $20. Now, the interesting thing to me is everybody's complaining about that. And I can see why. Just for the heck of it, I went into Starbucks. I'm not a big fan of Starbucks. I do get hooked on one of their drinks now and then when I'm stressed. I do exactly what I'm not supposed to do. I have caffeine and sugar. Okay, but it's a ridiculous amount of money. A large one of these drinks, a Frappuccino, their icy drink, is now $7.25. Even I'm not that stupid. Well, maybe once in a while. But really, it's gross. How can you spend that much money on a cup of coffee? Go home and make one yourself. So what we want to look at today is what is affordable and what can you do to fight inflation. I want to lick my thumb to get my papers apart. The things that you need to do that are being reflected in the cost of living in California, and I'm using California as my base for telling you what's going on here. If you don't live in California, you'll think we're crazy here, but we're being hit very hard with inflation and taxes from our governor, whom I'm also not fond of. So when I'm looking at all of this inflation and stress coming down, California is the fourth most expensive state in the US, according to the Missouri Economic Research and Information Center. The states that are more expensive than us are Hawaii. Now that makes sense because you have to fly most of the things over there if you want fresh vegetables and things, because shipping is still a little slow going over between the mainland and Hawaii. So that makes a little bit of sense that it's more expensive. Washington, D.C. is not a state, by the way, Missouri. We want to tell you that. It's a district, the District of Columbia. We don't want it to be a state, but it is one of the most expensive, even more so than California, and Massachusetts. And that surprises me. We lived in Boston, and I didn't find it that much more expensive than California. It's not inexpensive, but it is, I didn't think, as expensive as California. One reason being that if you live in Boston, you can take public transportation and you can walk. It's like New York City. You can walk a lot of places, and you can take the MTA. Yes, so it's not inexpensive, but we also found at the time we were living there quite a while ago now, maybe 10 years, 8 years, something like that. It's obviously gone up a lot, but the average from the data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis calculated that the average annual cost of living in California is $46,636. Now, that's a lot more than a single person on the average in California makes. If you have a family of 4, 2 adults and 2 kids, wow, just wait till you hear these numbers. The people who spend so much money to live in California, like it because we have so many different, it's so large geographically that we have many different areas to live in. We just recently moved to the desert. I know have told you that. We're very happy here. Um, and oddly enough, the cost of living is a little lower than it was where we were living in the extended Los Angeles area. So we moved down here and we're very happy, but we have the desert, we have the mountains, we have the ocean, and we have the cities. Although our cities are being destroyed, so I don't know anybody, including people that live in Beverly Hills and San Francisco and all these upscale neighborhoods. They're leaving because the cost of living is too high and the crime is definitely too high. So when we're talking about cost of living and inflation, this is all part of it. We're talking about food, fuel, utilities, housing, education, clothing, childcare, healthcare, taxes, and transportation. I am appalled at what childcare costs. If you are a single parent and you have to pay childcare costs, it's unbelievable. So after all of these studies have been done, the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the year 2019 and 2020, the Los Angeles metro area spent on an average $67,587 per year in those 2 years, 2019 and 2020. That's absurd. That's not what people make. So, as I said, each city, each area, and all, the cost of living can go up or down as it can in any state. So what I looked up then was, what does the average person think that you need to make to live in California? 2 adults that are married and have 2 children. Oh, excuse me. Yes, 2 children. And both are working and they're on an hourly wage. Now, keep in mind that the only ones making $20 an hour now, and this is an older study, so, are the fast food people. Or I guess some restaurants put it into, I wouldn't call Starbucks a fast food place, but I guess they do because they sell some sandwiches and things besides coffee. So things like that. The state minimum wage for companies with 26 or more employees is now $15 an hour. Okay. And they raised it to 20 in those places I just mentioned. The hourly living wage calculation looks a lot different for different household sizes. The income of 2 people working and 2 children working, the living wage is $30.54 an hour. Well, I just said that most employees on an hourly wage are making 15. And that, I do believe, is the mandatory hourly rate if you're being honest and paying your employees that. On the other hand, a single adult raising 3 kids would need to make $153,878 a year. Seriously? People think, apparently by this study, that you could live fairly nicely on $45,385 for a single parent, for a single person with no children. Well, Remember, those don't come in 52 weeks a year. So what are you going to do when you don't have the rest of the money? So generally speaking, the high demand versus low supply of things like housing, for instance, is causing everything to go up. And if you know that California ranks the fourth for the highest rent prices, this includes apartments and houses and things like this. And I think it's a little low. The typical house is valued at $775,876. We rank fourth highest in rent. So how can you live in California? How can you live in any of these states that have such high just for rent, fuel? It's craziness. We were living in an apartment before we decided exactly where we wanted to go totally retire, when we made the decision to go to the desert, where we do know several people, friends that have already moved up to 10 years before us. So that's why we decided to come to the desert, because cost of living was lower, and I intend to live to 100. I don't want to lose all my money and run out of money. Not good. My husband will live a long, long life. So we don't want to go through all of our money. And we looked at this, and by getting a condo down here, we were able to use veteran benefits. And I'm telling you this because I want you to know, no down payments, and you can afford to buy a house even with the inflation and the rates being high, if you're a veteran and you haven't used them. So what we want to tell you now is occupational areas of what their typical annual salary is in California. That might be a consideration for you when you're coming here, moving here. See what you can afford to buy or rent in housing, etc. But the obvious thing is nobody's moving to California anymore. They're moving out of California in droves. But let's go over these because I think they're pretty typical of other parts of the country. If you're in management, and that means upper management, I don't think this means being the manager of a fast food store. I could be very wrong. I can't find those exact numbers. It could be, I think this is more like management in a business, okay? $138,000 roughly. Computer and mathematical salaries are about $119. $119,100, excuse me. Architecture and engineering is approximately $105,770. Business and financial operations, I can't believe this would be right, except for perhaps somebody working in a bank, something like that. Business and financial operations. I definitely don't think it's a big producing stockbroker or financial planner, but they say it's 84,000. Community and social services. Now, this is a really low salary for somebody, $58,000. Social sciences, life and physical and social science. I don't know what that includes, but it's 91,000. If you're an attorney, somebody in the legal world here and not doing huge trials like are going on now, it's about 117 118,000. If you're a teacher, if you're in education and you're a teacher or you're in training or a library or something like that, it's only $65,000. How are you supposed to live on that and put anything away? So, construction and extraction. I guess that's knocking the buildings down. I don't know what else it would be. $62,000. Sales, $38,000. How do people live on this? And I'm not saying how do they live in a glorious, glamorous style. I'm talking about everyday people that are trying to exist in a nice place to live and raise their children. To go be an office admin, it's 46,000, almost 47,000. So I just don't know how people can live in California, but we do, and we love it. But there are a lot of people who don't make this kind of money in some of the fields like legal services and healthcare. And so actually our salaries are a little higher than some places. What is a good entry-level salary? You know, it's probably so different, and there's such a disparity between salaries for that it's not even fair to discuss them, because first of all, if you're a nurse, even a registered nurse, even with all your training and your education, you can enter in with between $30,000 and $40,000. If you are a stockbroker with maybe a master's, there for a while, everybody in every single industry had to have a master's or they wouldn't even talk to you, which in my mind is a little crazy. But that salary, of course, goes up entry level close to $100,000 if it's legal, financial, something like that. So there is a disparity. There is a disparity with education, but you are seeing these blue collar jobs that take a lot of training, like electrical, plumbing, construction. Those are going up. And of course, if you're in some business like hairdressing, makeup, spa work, things like that, waitressing, waiters, captains in restaurants, you can make a lot of money on tips, but sometimes you have to share with everybody in the restaurant. So beware what you're doing. But now, if you have your own business and your own business, you have to pay competing wages. So you better know what you're doing with these different businesses that you're starting. And you better know what the average salary is when you're hiring somebody. And you can look up these things. So if you're just getting ready to launch a business and you need an administrative assistant, you might need somebody who can write proposals for you. You might need a bookkeeper to keep your books straight before you hand them to the tax people. You might need, all sorts of things, but you better look up and see what you need to run your office, because you can't do it all yourself. And you better make sure that you have enough capital to get through the first year so that you can pay competitive salaries, or people won't come work for you. And if they do tell you and they've lied on their resume and you haven't done a background check, you're going to end up in a lot of trouble, and you're not going to be helping yourself with the inflation problem or the economic downturn problem. So You can choose where you want to live and fight inflation by doing some of those things we're talking about. But there are different ways that you can fight inflation on your own. Now, why I'm telling you this is because I know people from their 20s to their 80s, 90s, and some of them have children and some don't. So most of us have adult children that are now reaching, if you're my age, in your 70s, you have children that are getting close to their 50s or a little over, and you're concerned about them. You're concerned about how much it costs to put your kids on teams to go compete with volleyball, soccer, baseball, things like this. If you're trying to get your children, or in this case, your grandchildren, to win a scholarship to a university or even be picked up by a sports team before you get to school if you decide not to go to a university. There's all sorts of reasons why in retirement and reaching towards retirement, people are running out of money with this inflation and what is going on. You know, inflation can go up. They're telling us it's going to go down, but inflation could go up very easily because we have so many things facing the United States now, what with the wars and the trying to change everything, giving reparations to people, uh, going back to the Civil War, giving people money like the migrants, the illegal migrants, the illegal aliens, giving them $300 a week or giving them $1,000. Some of them are getting $10,000 debit cards. It's craziness. We can't afford to have all these people here. So that's another reason I'm upset. I think you should look at these grandparents who are trying to help their younger children with their grandchildren's costs that are piling up. You know, kids grow, they got to have clothes, they have to have healthy food on the table. And maybe your children are not making $500,000 a year or more than that. So you might have to step in there and help them. On the reverse side, some of your parents may be at the stage of where they're 90 to 100 or a little over, and maybe their Social Security isn't cutting it, so to speak, to have constant help for them or getting them a care place to go live. Maybe some of them have Alzheimer's. It's difficult to get a live-in nurse or to have somebody come in once a day. It's suddenly something that in your 70s or 80s you might have to think about to help your parents, because maybe they help pay for your education when you're growing up. Maybe they continued to do it when you got your first job. There's all sorts of things. So what I'm trying to tell you is right now, while things are 3.3% inflation, 3.5%, maybe climbing to 4%, maybe dropping to 2%, something like they keep saying, but I don't believe it. You need to cut back on your budget if you've been helping people and shelling out money for various things. And I'm not saying it's wrong to keep doing it if you can afford it, but you need to think about yourself. So the first thing you need to do is cut back, look at your budget, and see what you can do right away, the first thing you should do is cut things that are not necessary. Maybe you should not go out. Now I'm talking about older people in their 70s, 80s. Maybe you shouldn't play golf 3 times a week. Maybe you should cut it back to once a week. Whether you belong to a club or you belong to go to the community golf course, it all costs money. So maybe you could cut back on that. Maybe you could cut back on the number of movies you go to see. Maybe you could definitely cut back on the number of times you go out a month to dine. Maybe you could cut back on buying clothes at this age. How many new clothes do you have to buy at this age? So what else could you cut back? Definitely you could go through your grocery cart and cut things back on your groceries. Maybe you don't need as many snacks as you think you need. The potato chips, the candy, the ice cream. Well, we all like to eat them, I'm sure. But if you're getting to be in dire straits and are worried, you better cut these things out of your budget and cut them out rapidly. Then go back to it when you decide you can afford it. But if you're living on Social Security, it's not going to be going up like you think it is. And they always say they'll take it away. It doesn't matter if you paid into it. All right? So, first of all, cut back on the things at the grocery store and unnecessary expenses. Maybe you want to go see a movie a couple times a week. Maybe you want to go to the symphony or the play and you can no longer afford season tickets. Maybe you should choose one symphony to go to, and when things get a little better, go back and get your season tickets. You have to stop using those credit cards and pay them off. Now, credit cards should be for emergencies and things that you need to get done. Sometimes people like to use credit cards rather than cash because it's easier to keep track of what you're spending, and that's a good idea. We're going to do a show on digital dollars and getting rid of real cash. Now, there's a lot of people who say right now you should use real cash because it goes to somebody else and it goes down the line, it trickles down to everybody, and that same $100 bill or $50 bill gets used over and over and over. But when you have cash in your pocket or in your handbag, it's very easy to spend it rather than having to get in and dig through your things to get your credit card and know how much you can spend. So there's a reason for everything. You have to make these decisions yourself. And there are other ways to cut back. You can now monitor your electricity, your gas bill, your water bill, your utilities for your home. If you're living in someplace in the east where it gets extremely hot, or Florida, someplace like that, or in the desert, you're going to have really high electricity bills. Now, there are a lot of people who will put their electricity bill or the gas bill, whatever, on average monthly billing, and they take care of it like that, or they don't pay their electricity bill during the summer. They break it up so they pay it with their winter billing because it's lower. I don't know those things. You need to take time out of your day and call the utility companies or look it up on the internet to see if any of your utilities can help you out with those bills. And remember, you don't need to have every light on in the house. Turn them out. When you leave a room, turn them out. How many times did your mom tell you that? Turn the lights out. Turn the lights out. The faucet's dripping. Turn it off all the way. Don't waste the water when you're trying to brush your teeth. Turn it off. Okay, all these things mom used to say to you, is what you need to be saying to yourself now. The other thing I want to tell you, because we are running out of time, you need to try to save money even if you are in a pickle right now, because things won't always be like this, and you need to prepare for the next spurt of inflation. You know, it's hard to save money, but if you're in this place right now and you don't have any savings or anything, I urge you to go find a bank, a financial institution that will give you a high earning savings account. Now, what I mean is make sure it's over the inflation rate and make sure you're getting an honest one. There are some really good banks that have these things. One thing is that you can ask your bank if they have it. They have several high yielding ones, but you can't take money out normally in regular banks. You just need to leave it there, or they have a base of what you need to deposit to get these high rates of anything over what the inflation rate is or the interest rate is these days. So I'm going to recommend one that I've done a lot of research on the internet. I'm not actually recommending it to you. It's one I use because you can take money out of it when you want. There is no balance requirement. You don't need to put $100,000 in it, or 50,000 or 25,000. You can put whatever you want in. So those of you who are really struggling, you could put $25 in a month, a week, whatever you feel you could, and you can watch it building up. If I'm hoping at this age you all have emergency cash, emergency money accessible to you, because inflation is not going away. And if you're retired in particular, you're not going to be getting a raise. Which leads to one more thing I want to tell you. If you are still working, if you are working and you're two family people working and all, why don't you go ask for a raise? I know all of these companies are supposedly struggling, but some are raking in the money. So you should see what's going on. You should know what your company is doing that you work for. And if you think you deserve it, and I'm sure you do because you're working hard, you're not a slough off, because that's not how you get ahead in the world, you can go ask for a raise. All they're going to do is say, sorry, no money now. We'll look at this again in 6 months, or we'll never look at it. Maybe you want to walk out. So you decide yourself. Jobs are kind of hard to come by, so I wouldn't be walking out too fast without looking at your possibilities. The other thing I wanted to tell you is we need side hustles. If you're really in trouble, you need a side hustle. And I've talked about side hustles a lot and what's available out there. And so what I have decided, I'm actually going to go see what the world of affiliate marketing is like. I want to check these things out. I want to see if they're telling you the truth in these different ones. I'm going to explore a lot of different ones, if they're actually telling you the truth about them, or if they're con jobs, what my opinion is. So we'll be talking about that in some of the upcoming shows. And we are going to be continuing talking about health and what is going on in the country and what's happening around the world. So saying there's bird flu around now. I haven't seen one case reported in this area, and I haven't actually seen any statistics on bird flu except for the price of eggs going up. I don't know if there is something like the bird flu coming. I don't know if they're just trying to scare you. Yeah, I think that's a possibility for some of these things. I think it's a possibility for getting more vaccines out there and all. So we're going to be taking a look at all of those things. We're going to be taking a look at what's in your food, the preservatives and things they add, to just make them have longer shelf life, not just to be preserved in your refrigerator or your cupboard. We're going to look at that. We're going to look at different rates for housing, and we're going to continue to try to make your life better. So don't worry if you're in a little pit right now and you can't sleep. Remember, you can always count your blessings instead of sheep. So try that before you go to sleep at night. But in the meantime, get off the chair, stand up, and start doing something to correct your financial position, because we're in for the fight. We're in and we're fit and we're going to win. America is the greatest land on earth, the home of the free and because of the brave. All right, everybody, thank you for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you next week. Remember, cherish yesterday, dream tomorrow, and live today. Thanks for joining me.